again, Speaking Truth portion of our event. We have Jim Peters, and he's back with us. And Jim will discuss the 400-year Wampanoag experience under European colonization. Take it away.
Thank you. I appreciate the Reverend's words. It was very enlightening, and I'd just like to begin. Like to offer greetings and thanks and good day to all our friends and aliens, allies of Connecticut River Valley, Uncle Katashani, Sister Claire, and Friends of the Peace Pagoda. Much thanks to the Interfaith Council in Nolan Vega for providing us with this opportunity to offer a perspective on our shared history over the past 400 years. As said, I'm Jim Peters, Mashpee Wampanoag. And while I'm the executive director of the Massachusetts Commission on Indian Affairs and on the Plymouth, the governor's Plymouth 400 Commission, for topics such as these, I can always speak as a Mashpee Wampanoag. You see, it's kind of personal to me, born and raised in Mashpee, being nurtured by a traditional tribal community during a time when we were the only ones there. I was bonded. It's in my blood, and I'm of the land. We are people of the first light, first contact, keepers of the Eastern Gate. We have experienced maybe 100 years of visits from across the Great Pond, explorers, fishermen, military types. Some were pleasant and informative, others horrific, killings and kidnappings. Many were taken, few returned. We noticed a difference when the Mayflower came to our shores. They came with their women and children. It is apparent they came to stay. It is said that they came to escape religious persecution, something we found they had no qualms with sharing. That before they came, they signed the Mayflower Compact, the first body politic in this new world, professing their loyalty to their king and to commit to their charter of establishing a first colony in the northern area of Virginia. The charter provided incentives and liberties to conquer this land, consistent with the Christian doctrine of discovery. Whereas there were no Christian sovereigns, they had the right to take and enslave the non-humans of this land. To me, it's almost as if we've gone full circle. As the US and UK commemorate 400 years of the Mayflower landing on these shores and establishing arguably the first permanent colony in the New World, we are currently immersed in a global pandemic, and your economies are being challenged. That about 406 years ago, the Wampanoag people were devastated by a European pandemic, where up to 90% of our people perished. The Plymouth Colony was established at a place known as Patuxet, where the people were wiped out by the disease. That our Massasoit Usamiquan, who had once commanded several thousand warriors, was relegated to several hundred. His domain on the northern end of Narragansett Bay was challenged by his nemesis, Canonicus, the Narragansett sachem of the bay, whose people escaped the perils of the pandemic. Tisquantum, a citizen of Patuxet was kidnapped before the pandemic and taken to Spain, where he found sanctuary with Jesuits, and then to England, where he found passage home, only to find his community perished. Usamiquan summoned him to council to gain knowledge of his journey. One can only surmise how he described the hero's military might and propensity to war. Usamiquan took 90 warriors to Plymouth Colony, along with 5 deer and some waterfowl, to hold what America considers the first Thanksgiving. Apparently, they both had common concerns. The Pilgrims were scared to death of the wilderness and all the inhabitants, and Usamiquan had his issues with Canonicus. It appears that Tisquantum negotiated the first treaty of the New World, one of mutual protection. Our Massasoit lived by the principle, my word is my honor. And that honor was upheld by his people, and in this case, 50 years of forbearance with the colony until his death. In the meantime, some 30,000 colonists had immigrated to Plymouth and Massachusetts Bay colonies, and they became well entrenched in this new world. It has been said that there were rumors during Usamiquan's funeral of an uprising to drive them back to the sea. praying Indian, John Sassaman, committed a treasonous act by informing the colony of such talk. Wamsuta, the successor as Massasoit, was summoned to the colony to pledge his allegiance to their authority. We can only assume that the discussions were not going well as Wamsuta became ill and died, suspected of being poisoned. Metacomet, the second son of Usamikwan, was raised as a Massasoit. He was called King Philip by the colonists. He was also summoned to the colony to pledge his allegiance, and as I understand, he reluctantly submitted to protect his people. During the ensuing winter, John Sassaman was found under the ice, and consequently, 2 of Metacomet's lieutenants were accused, tried, and executed by the colony with no conclusive evidence. The acts of the colony were beyond their authority, and King Philip's War was declared. It lasted between 1675 and 1678. Many native bands experienced the treachery of the colonists and did not want to participate. There are a number of praying Indians who found themselves compromised, and their alliance with the colony led to King Philip's capture and execution. His head was displayed on a pike in Town Square in Plymouth for 27 years. To date, it is considered the bloodiest war per capita that has transpired on this soil, now called America. During and after the King Philip's War, colonial retaliation against the native survivors was brutal. Villages surrendered, and many were boarded on ships and sent to parts unknown. The native praying Indians were chained and taken to Deer Island in Boston Harbor in October with no provisions or shelter to withstand the coming harsh winter. Many died. Each year, descendants of the survivors continue to commemorate this egregious, unjust retaliation with a spiritual paddle from Watertown to Deer Island. The Boston Harbor and other remote islands became commonplace for native incarceration. The Massachusetts Punkapog, whose plantation is now Canton, and other Indians, Christian or otherwise, met a similar fate. The Hassamisset Nipmucks, isolated on their 7,500-acre plantation, what is now Grafton, were assigned an overseer who began selling off the land to pay for his services. There were complaints, and 40 years after the war, the Great and General Court allotted land to each of the 7 surviving Nipmuc families, in total 500 acres, with the balance of the plantation being auctioned off to white settlers. Today, the tribe holds 4-acre reservation. The Chappaquiddick Island was their plantation, and early on, the charm of the place attracted colonizers. Reluctant to challenge colonial arrogance, they found themselves being displaced on their own land. Through a process of encroachment, along with racial and political pressure, the Chappaquiddics found themselves relegated to the poorest soil on the island. Unable to grow food or have access to needed resources, they eventually were displaced from their Aboriginal lands. They were absorbed by other tribes like Mashpee and Aquinnah, while others were acculturated into society. Concerted efforts are currently ongoing to regain some foothold on their Aboriginal island. The Mashpee Plantation was established around 1666 by deed from Tuckenchosen and Weetquish, 2 sachems, sovereigns of the area, to the South Sea Indians, never to be sold or alienated unless they all agree. This deed was recorded in the Plymouth Registry and accounted for approximately 50 square miles. After long and contentious relations with the colony and eventually the Commonwealth, the traditional communal land ownership and government was disrupted by the creation of the Mashpee District, a quasi-political body allotting their lands among the tribal proprietors. Individual land ownership, along with the associated benefits and liabilities, was certainly a foreign concept, and they were given 28 years to learn the process. In 1870, Mashpee District became the incorporated town of Mashpee, contrary to the vote of the people and the recommendations of the Senate Earl Report, which recognized that the population was not large enough, nor was there an economy to support a tax base. It is said that within 20 years, 80% of the land titles changed hands. By 1930, the town was bankrupt and went into receivership to the state. The state formed the Mashpee Advisory Committee to develop a tax base for the town, and over a 30-year period, the majority of the land ownership left tribal hands and into major development interests. Beginning in the 1960s and 70s, a once sleepy town on Cape Cod became the fastest growing town in the country. In 1976, the Mashpee tribe filed a land claim suit under the 1790 Non-Intercourse Act, trying to stop indiscriminate development of their Aboriginal lands. The defense countered whether Mashpee constituted a tribe under the 1790 Act. Consequently, there was no formal definition of a tribe, and they spent 40 days and 40 nights before an all-white jury to decide whether they met a criteria formulated by the court. The jury's decision was inconsistent with the instructions of the judge, and after deliberation, he declared, "You can be a tribe for any other purpose except for the return of your lands. The consequences are too great." In 1978, the Department of Interior developed the federal recognition criteria. It took Mashpee about 12 years to complete the petition. In 2007, 30 years after, Mashpee became federally recognized. The tribe pursued a casino opportunity in an effort to generate jobs and revenue for its people. And to this day, they continue to fight to meet eligibility criteria imposed by the colonizer. The Gay-Hittacuna tribe of Martha's Vineyard has a similar history, where their plantation lands were also allotted and subject to them to taxation. They also filed a land claim suit, although after witnessing the racial and political trauma Mashpee endured, they opted for a land claim settlement. Their reservation was established. They became eligible federal programs, housing, and other benefits. They are subject to federal jurisdiction, to state jurisdiction. They also have casino aspirations, initially in 1990 in New Bedford, more recently in the bingo operation on their lands in the island. And they too are fighting criteria imposed by the colonizer. So here we are, 2020, 400 years of colonization. And when I consider that we have been on this land for millenniums and have taken on all challenges to our continued evolution as people of this land, I would say the white man has been our most formidable adversary. You have imposed the fear of your God upon us, confined us into praying towns for indoctrination on how to become a good Christian human being. You gave us the Bible, but no formal education on how to survive in your land. You have clear-cut our forests, destroyed our habitat, our ability to live in harmony with our Mother Earth. You have broken down our communal structure, our sense of family, into individuals competing. Rather than being a self-sufficient community, we have become dependent on your system that we have found to be unforgiving. As we have evolved our attempts to participate in the economic opportunities, as so many of you have prospered through exploitation of our resources, to this day we find ever-challenging obstacles to prevent our success. As we look around this hemisphere, around the world, you have been consistent in your treatment upon indigenous people on their own land, oppressive, destructive, genocidal. Of all the principles that I was told through an attempted Christian indoctrination, your actions towards indigenous people has been contrary to your faith. It is hard to conceive that your God instructed the Pope to declare such papal bulls that non-Christians are non-human, granting the right to conquer and consign them to perpetual servitude. But that is literally what continues to be imposed upon us to this day. Some say we have survived to remind you of your sins and help you to see the light. It has been difficult to have patience with you. I am humbled to know that there are a number of us who continue our connection to the spirit of this land, that determination will continue to find stability and a secure path for our people, for our future generations to evolve as we have for millenniums, despite the obstacles placed before us. I pray to the Great Spirit every day, giving thanks for the first light. I pray for our people that they are well and without want or need. I pray for all human beings that they can find clarity in thought and understanding of our ultimate purpose in life, our obligation to provide a just and harmonious world for our future generations. Aho. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jim, for speaking the hard truth. and the much needed Native narrative on this moment in history, one that is told far too often with that colonizer lens. And equally important is the Indigenous voice as to how this history has impacted Native people today. Thank you so much for bringing that to this event today. Thank you.